The headlights caught her like a ghost. White silk dragging through snow, bare shoulders trembling, mascara streaked down her face like war paint. Ethan Cole had seen a lot of strange things on Route 9 after midnight, but never a bride walking alone in a blizzard, miles from anything resembling civilization. When she turned toward his truck, her eyes held something that made his hands tighten on the wheel. Not fear of him, but fear of what she was running from. He should have kept driving, should have called the police, should have done anything except what he did next, roll down his window and ask if she needed help. Because the moment she whispered please, everything in his carefully controlled life was about to shatter. If you want to know how a single act of kindness can unravel two lives and rebuild them into something neither person saw coming, stay with me until the end. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The snow had been falling for 3 hours straight, the kind of heavy, wet snow that turned New England back roads into tunnels of white silence. Ethan Cole drove slowly, his truck's headlights cutting weak yellow paths through the storm. The radio had given up 2 miles back, leaving only static and the rhythmic scrape of windshield wipers fighting a losing battle. He was tired. Bone-deep tired in a way that had nothing to do with the 14-hour shift he'd just finished at the warehouse. This was the exhaustion that came from being a single father to an 8-year-old daughter who still sometimes woke up crying for a mother who'd been gone 2 years. The kind of tired that made you drive the long way home just to have a few more minutes of silence before stepping back into the role of being everything to someone who needed everything. Ethan wasn't expecting to see her. At first, he thought it was a trick of the snow, a swirl of white against white, movement where there shouldn't be any. But then his headlights caught her fully, and his foot hit the brake so hard the truck fishtailed slightly before grinding to a stop. A woman stood on the shoulder of the road, maybe 30 feet ahead. She wore a wedding dress, not a coat over a wedding dress, not a dress with boots and practical layers, just the dress itself, strapless, elaborate, the kind of gown that cost more than Ethan made in 6 months. The train dragged behind her in the snow, already gray with road salt and slush. Her arms were wrapped around herself, bare shoulders shaking, dark hair plastered to her face. She turned toward his headlights, and Ethan saw her eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had just made a terrible decision and couldn't go back. Every instinct he'd honed as a father, every protective impulse that had kept his daughter safe, screamed at him to drive past. This was trouble. Clear, obvious, none of your business trouble. The kind that started with a stranger on a dark road and ended with complications he couldn't afford. But those eyes. Ethan put the truck in park and rolled down his window. The cold hit him immediately, snow driving into the cab. The woman didn't move closer. She just stood there, shivering, watching him with an expression that might have been hope or might have been resignation. "You okay?" Ethan called out. It was possibly the stupidest question he'd ever asked. She was standing in a blizzard in a wedding dress at 1 a.m. Of course she wasn't okay. The woman's lips moved, but he couldn't hear her over the wind. Ethan cursed under his breath, grabbed his jacket from the passenger seat, and climbed out of the truck. The cold was vicious, the kind that stole your breath. He walked toward her, holding the jacket out. "Here," he said. "You're going to freeze." Up close, she was younger than he'd thought. Maybe late 20s, early 30s. Beautiful in a way that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp cheekbones and perfectly shaped eyebrows, though the mascara running down her face and the blue tint to her lips somewhat diminished the effect. The dress was torn in places, he noticed, deliberately torn, like someone had ripped themselves free. She took the jacket with shaking hands and pulled it around her shoulders. It swallowed her frame. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, raw, like she'd been screaming. "What happened?" Ethan asked, then immediately regretted it. "Never mind. None of my business. Do you need me to call someone? Police? Ambulance?" "No." The word came out sharp, almost panicked. "No police. Please." Ethan studied her face. No visible injuries beyond some scratches on her arms that might have come from running through woods. Her pupils were normal, focused. Not drunk or high, just terrified. "Okay," he said slowly. "No police. But I can't leave you out here. You'll die of exposure in 20 minutes. She nodded, almost absently, like death by freezing was just another option on a long list of bad choices. "I'm Ethan," he offered. Ethan Cole. I live about 10 minutes from here. I can take you somewhere warm, let you use a phone, figure out next steps. That work for you? She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her calculating, weighing the risk of a strange man against the certainty of freezing to death. Lena, she said finally. My name is Lena. It was a lie. Ethan could tell immediately, the slight hesitation before she said it, the way her eyes flickered away. But he didn't call her on it. If she needed to lie about her name, she probably had a good reason. Nice to meet you, Lena, he said, gesturing toward the truck. Come on, let's get you out of this storm. She followed him to the passenger side, and he opened the door for her. She climbed in carefully, gathering the wet, heavy fabric of the dress around her legs. Ethan walked back around and slid into the driver's seat, cranking the heat up as high as it would go. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Ethan concentrated on the road, which had gotten significantly worse in just the few minutes he'd been stopped. Lena, or whatever her real name was, sat with her hands pressed against the heating vents, staring straight ahead. Were you at a wedding? Ethan asked, then winced at his own stupidity. Sorry, obvious question. My wedding, she said quietly. Was supposed to be. Past tense, supposed to be. What happened? She turned to look at him, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. It was the look of someone who had just walked through fire and couldn't quite believe they'd made it to the other side. I left, she said simply. Before or after the ceremony? During. Ethan let out a low whistle. That's one hell of an exit. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. You could say that. They drove in silence for another few minutes. Ethan's mind was racing, trying to piece together the story. Runaway bride, expensive dress, alone on a back road in the middle of nowhere. Either she'd run from the venue on foot, or someone had dumped her here. Neither option was good. Did someone hurt you? He asked carefully. No, Lena said. Not physically. That answer told him more than she probably meant it to. His house appeared through the snow, a small 2-story with faded blue siding and a porch light that flickered but never quite died. Not much to look at, but it was warm and dry, and right now that seemed like enough. Ethan pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. Listen, he said, turning to face her. I have a daughter. She's 8. She's asleep upstairs, and I need her to stay that way because she has school in the morning, and she's already dealing with enough without waking up to find a strange woman in our house. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take you inside, get you some dry clothes, make you something warm to drink, and you can use the phone or the internet or whatever you need. But I need you to be quiet, and I need you to understand that if you're bringing danger to my door, I need to know about it now. Lena met his eyes. Hers were gray, he noticed. Storm cloud gray. I'm not dangerous, she said. But you're right that I might bring danger. I don't know. I don't know what he'll do. He? My fiancé. She said the word like it tasted bitter. Ex-fiancé, I suppose. Is he looking for you? Probably. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, snow melting against his fingers. This was insane. He should drive her to the police station, let them handle it. But something in her expression stopped him, a combination of pride and desperation that reminded him of the way his daughter looked when she was trying very hard not to cry. Okay, he said. Come on. They went in through the side door directly into the kitchen. Ethan flipped on the light, revealing a space that was clean but worn, everything functional but nothing fancy. Dishes from dinner sat in the drying rack. A child's drawing was pinned to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets. Lena stood in the middle of the kitchen, dripping melted snow onto the linoleum, looking completely out of place in her ruined designer gown. Wait here, Ethan whispered. He disappeared upstairs and returned a few minutes later with sweatpants, a t-shirt, and thick socks. Bathroom's through there, he said, pointing. There's a towel on the rack. Take your time. She accepted the clothes and vanished into the bathroom. Ethan heard the lock click, then the sound of water running. He put on a pot of coffee, more for something to do with his hands than because he wanted any. His mind kept circling back to the same question. What the hell was he doing? He didn't know this woman, didn't know her story, didn't know if she was telling the truth, didn't know if he'd just invited chaos into the fragile peace he'd built for himself and Sophie. But he also remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to feel like the walls were closing in and there was no way out. After Emily died, he'd spent months in that dark place, barely keeping his head above water while trying to be strong for their daughter. Someone had helped him then. His sister had moved in for 6 weeks, taking over the parts of life he couldn't handle. His boss had given him flexible hours without asking questions. The neighbors had shown up with casseroles and offers to watch Sophie when he needed to just sit in his truck and cry. Maybe this was his chance to pay that forward. The bathroom door opened and Lena emerged. She'd towel-dried her hair as best she could, and it hung in damp waves past her shoulders. The sweatpants were too long, bunching around her ankles, and the t-shirt hung loose on her frame. Without the wedding dress, she looked smaller, younger, more vulnerable. "Better?" Ethan asked. She nodded. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. Frozen to death, probably." "Probably." He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. She wrapped both hands around it, absorbing the heat. "You want to tell me what happened?" Ethan asked, leaning against the counter. "Or we can skip that part. Up to you." Lena was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it held answers. "I was supposed to marry Marcus Hale," she said finally. The name meant nothing to Ethan, but the way she said it, like the words themselves had weight, told him it should. "He's very wealthy," Lena continued, "very powerful. My family arranged the marriage. I knew what it was from the beginning. A business transaction dressed up as romance. He got a beautiful wife from the right family to complete his image. I got financial security and social standing. Everyone was very clear about the terms. Except you changed your mind. I woke up this morning and realized I couldn't do it." She looked up at him, and her eyes were wet. "I stood in that hotel room, looking at myself in that dress, and I couldn't breathe. It was like I could see the next 50 years laid out in front of me. Charity galas and society dinners, and standing beside him while he made decisions about my life without asking what I wanted. And I couldn't. So you ran." "So I ran." A shaky laugh escaped her. "Left my phone, my purse, everything. Just gathered up my dress and walked out the back entrance. Made it about 2 miles before I realized I had no idea where I was going. I've never felt so stupid and so free at the same time." Ethan took a sip of his coffee, processing. "This Marcus, is he the type to let you go quietly?" Lena's expression hardened. "No, he's the type who considers me a possession he paid for. The wedding cost $3 million. He'll want a return on his investment." Jesus. "My family will be looking for me too. My mother was probably planning the press release about my nervous breakdown before I even made it to the highway." "You don't have anybody you can call? Friends?" "I had Marcus's friends. My family's friends. I'm not sure I have any friends that are actually mine." She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, which somehow made it worse. Ethan set down his coffee cup. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Tonight, you sleep. Guest room's upstairs, second door on the left. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. You can use my computer to contact whoever you need to contact, or not contact anyone if that's what you want. But you need rest first." "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering." He met her eyes. "Look, I don't know you, and you don't know me, but I know what it's like to feel like your world's falling apart. And I know that sometimes the only thing that gets you through is somebody being kind for no reason other than it's the right thing to do. So let me be that for you tonight. Tomorrow, we'll worry about everything else." Lena's eyes filled with tears, and she blinked them back rapidly. "Why are you helping me?" "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, but my gut says you're not a bad person, just someone who made a hard choice, and I figure if the roles were reversed, I'd want someone to stop for me too." She nodded slowly, setting down her coffee. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't met my daughter. She's going to have about 1,000 questions when she sees you in the morning." That got a real smile. "What's her name?" "Sophie. Sophie Rose. She's 8 going on 35, smart as hell, and still figuring out how to exist in a world without her mom." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Ethan pushed off from the counter. "Come on. I'll show you the room." He led her upstairs, moving quietly past Sophie's door. He could hear his daughter's soft breathing from inside. the sound that always made his chest ache with how much he loved her and how terrified he was of screwing this up. The guest room was small but clean. Double bed with a patchwork quilt, a dresser that had belonged to his grandmother, a window that looked out over the backyard. "There are extra blankets in the closet if you need them," Ethan said. "Bathroom's right across the hall. Help yourself to anything you need." "Ethan," Lena said as he turned to leave. He paused in the doorway. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me, for stopping, for not asking me to be anything other than someone who needed help." Something in his chest twisted. "Get some sleep, Lena, or whatever your real name is." She smiled faintly. "It's Victoria, Victoria Ashworth, but I think I like Lena better right now. Victoria's a nice name. It belongs to someone else, someone who did what she was told and never questioned whether there might be another way to live. And Lena? Lena gets to figure out who she wants to be." Ethan nodded. "Good night, Lena." "Good night." He closed the door softly and stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. The house was quiet except for the wind howling outside and the faint creak of old wood settling. He'd just brought a stranger into his home, a stranger being pursued by wealthy, powerful people who wouldn't take her disappearance lightly. This was either the best thing he'd ever done or the biggest mistake of his life. Probably both. He checked on Sophie one more time, adjusting her blankets and pushing hair back from her face. She murmured something in her sleep, something that sounded like "mama," and his heart cracked a little wider. In his own room, Ethan lay awake long after he should have been sleeping. He kept thinking about Victoria Lena, standing in that snowstorm in a wedding dress, choosing uncertainty over a life that was already planned out. It took guts to do what she'd done. It also took desperation. He understood both. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, he finally drifted off, his last conscious thought a prayer to whoever might be listening that he hadn't just made everything infinitely worse. When Ethan woke, winter sunlight was streaming through his bedroom window, and he could hear voices downstairs. One was Sophie's high, excited chatter. The other was Lena's softer responses. He was out of bed and down the stairs in seconds, still wearing yesterday's clothes. The scene in the kitchen stopped him in his tracks. Sophie sat at the table, still in her pajamas, swinging her legs while she talked a mile a minute. Lena stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with an ease that suggested this wasn't her first time. She'd found one of Emily's old aprons, the blue one with yellow flowers, and tied it over the borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt. "And then my dad said I could get a library card, which is basically like having magic powers because you can take home any book you want, and I took home 7, which Dad said was too many, but I read them all anyway, and now I need to go back, but he says we have to wait until Saturday because he works too much." Which is true, because he's always tired. Sophie spotted him in the doorway and grinned. "Dad, Lena makes pancakes that aren't burned." "Good morning to you too, sweetheart." Ethan looked at Lena, who had the grace to look slightly apologetic. "She woke up early," Lena explained. "I heard her come downstairs and thought I should probably explain who I was before she decided I was a burglar." "I don't think burglars make pancakes," Sophie announced confidently. "Unless they're really nice burglars." "What did you tell her?" Ethan asked carefully. "That I'm a friend who needed a place to stay for a little while, if that's okay." Sophie didn't wait for his response. "Is it okay, Dad? Can Lena stay? Please?" "She knows how to make pancakes, and she said she'd teach me how to braid my hair the fancy way, and she doesn't even mind that Mr. Whiskers sleeps on the couch, even though he sheds everywhere." "Whoa, slow down." Ethan walked over and pressed a kiss to the top of Sophie's head. "When did you even have time to tell her about Mr. Whiskers?" "She asked if we had any pets, and I showed her, and she said he was very handsome for a cat who's missing half an ear." Ethan glanced at Lena, who flipped a pancake with perfect timing. "He is handsome," Lena said seriously. "Distinguished, even." Sophie beamed. "Can I talk to Lena alone for a minute?" Ethan asked his daughter. "Are you going to have a boring adult conversation?" "Probably." "Fine." Sophie huffed dramatically and slid off her chair. "But if you say she can't stay, I'm going to be very disappointed in you." She marched out of the kitchen with all the righteous indignation an 8-year-old could muster. Ethan waited until he heard her footsteps on the stairs before turning to Lena. "You didn't have to—" "I woke up early and couldn't sleep," Lena interrupted. "And I heard her come down, and I thought—" She trailed off, setting down the spatula. I thought it would be better if she met me normally rather than wondering why there was a strange woman in her house. I'm sorry. I should have asked first. No, it's fine. Good, actually. She's not scared? She's 8. She's curious. And apparently very concerned that you work too much and don't know how to make pancakes properly. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. She's not wrong on either count. They stood there for a moment, the kitchen warm with the smell of pancakes and coffee, morning light making everything feel safer than it had in the dark. I should probably go, Lena said quietly. I've imposed enough, and the longer I stay, the more risk there is that… Where would you go? She didn't have an answer. Look, Ethan said, I'm not suggesting anything permanent, but you need time to figure things out. Make some calls, get your bearings, maybe find a friend who actually is a friend. Give it a few days. We've got the room, and honestly, if you can keep Sophie entertained while I'm at work, that's worth more than gold. I can't pay you. Did I ask for money? No, but then it's settled. You stay until you have a real plan. Something better than walking along Route 9 in a blizzard. Lena looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Why are you doing this? Because 2 years ago, when my wife died, I couldn't see any way forward, and people helped me. They showed up with food and childcare and patience when I was barely holding it together. This is just returning the favor to the universe, I guess. I'm not a charity case. Good. I'm not a charity. I'm just a guy who stopped on a snowy road and is trying to do the decent thing. Before Lena could respond, Sophie's voice called down from upstairs. Dad, I can't find my red shirt. Did you check the laundry basket? Why would it be in the laundry basket? Because that's where dirty clothes go. It's not dirty. I only wore it twice. Ethan looked at Lena. Welcome to my life. She laughed, really laughed, and the sound transformed her face into something warm and unguarded. I'll go help her, Lena offered. If that's okay. You sure? I'm good at finding things. She untied the apron and headed upstairs, leaving Ethan alone in the kitchen with a stack of perfect pancakes and the growing certainty that his life had just gotten a lot more complicated. He pulled out his phone and did something he probably should have done last night. He Googled Marcus Hale. The results made his stomach drop. Marcus Hale, CEO of Hale Industries. Net worth estimated at $8 billion. Ruthless businessman known for hostile takeovers and aggressive litigation. Engaged to Victoria Ashworth, daughter of Senator James Ashworth. There was a photo from the engagement party. Marcus stood tall and commanding in a perfectly tailored suit, his hand possessively on Victoria's waist. She wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a diamond ring the size of a small country. Ethan stared at the woman in the photo, polished, perfect, completely composed, and tried to reconcile her with the person currently upstairs helping his daughter find a red shirt. They were the same person, but they weren't. The woman in the photo had been playing a role. The woman in his house was trying to figure out who she was when nobody was watching. He heard laughter from upstairs, Sophie's delighted giggle followed by Lena's warm response. Ethan closed the browser and pocketed his phone. Whatever happened next, he'd figure it out. That's what you did when life threw unexpected things at you. You adapted. You helped where you could. You made pancakes and found red shirts and took things one day at a time. And you hoped like hell you were making the right choice. The red shirt turned out to be in Sophie's backpack, wadded up next to a half-eaten granola bar and a library book that was 3 days overdue. Lena found it within minutes, which earned her a status somewhere between hero and magician in Sophie's eyes. By the time Ethan left for work, his daughter was already planning Lena's entire day with the kind of enthusiastic authority only an 8-year-old could muster. There would be hair braiding, obviously. Also cookie baking, because Lena had mentioned she knew how to make the kind that didn't come from a tube. And possibly a tea party, though Sophie was willing to negotiate on that one if Lena thought it was too babyish. You don't have to do any of that, Ethan said quietly to Lena while Sophie brushed her teeth upstairs. She'll understand if you need space. I don't mind, Lena replied. Honestly, it's nice to feel useful. Just don't let her rope you into watching those videos where people make slime. She'll want to try it, and trust me, it ends badly. Lena smiled. Noted. He hesitated at the door, keys in hand. My number's on the fridge. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me. I can be back here in 15 minutes. We'll be fine. And if anyone comes to the door, I don't answer. I know. She met his eyes. Ethan, I promise I'm not going to put Sophie at risk. If I thought there was any real danger, I'd leave. He wanted to believe her. More than that, he wanted to trust his instinct that she was telling the truth. But instinct had let him down before. Okay, he said finally. I'll be back around 6. The warehouse job was mind-numbing work, which was exactly why Ethan had taken it. Scanning boxes, moving inventory, filling orders. Nothing that required him to think too hard or make decisions that mattered. After Emily died, he'd needed simple, needed routine, needed something he could do on autopilot while the rest of him tried to figure out how to keep breathing. Today, autopilot wasn't working. His mind kept drifting back to his house, to Sophie and Lena, to all the ways this could go wrong. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart jumped, expecting disaster. But it was always just work notifications or spam calls about his truck's extended warranty. During lunch break, he sat in his truck and Googled Victoria Ashworth. The results were extensive and carefully curated. Charity work, museum boards, society pages, a college degree from Wellesley in art history, an engagement announcement that described her as poised and elegant, the perfect complement to Mr. Hale's dynamic presence. There were hundreds of photos. Victoria at galas in designer gowns, Victoria cutting ribbons at hospital wing openings, Victoria standing slightly behind Marcus at press conferences, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her expression pleasantly neutral. In none of them did she look genuinely happy. Ethan found himself staring at one particular image from a charity auction 6 months ago. The photographer had caught Victoria in profile, her attention fixed on something outside the frame. Her face was unguarded for just that moment, and the expression there was pure exhaustion. The look of someone who'd been playing a role so long she'd forgotten what her real face felt like. He understood that look. His phone rang and he nearly dropped it. But it was just his sister, Karen. Hey, he answered. Hey yourself, you sound weird. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Ethan, I've known you for 36 years. You get a specific tone when you're lying. What happened? He sighed. Karen had moved back to Boston last year, but she still called weekly to check on him and Sophie. She'd been his lifeline after Emily died, and she had a bullshit detector that was basically supernatural. I picked up a hitchhiker last night, he said. Silence. Karen? I'm trying to decide if you're joking. Not joking. Ethan Michael Cole, what the hell? She was walking in a wedding dress in the middle of a blizzard. What was I supposed to do? Oh my God, is she still there? Tell me she's not still there. She's staying for a few days. Karen made a sound like a tea kettle reaching full boil. Have you lost your mind? You have a daughter. You can't just bring random strangers into your house. She's not dangerous. How do you know that? I know. That's not how knowing works. Karen took a breath, clearly trying to calm herself. Okay. Tell me everything, from the beginning. So he did. He told her about finding Lena on the road, about the runaway bride situation, about Marcus Hale, and the $3 million wedding. He told her about Sophie making pancakes with Lena this morning, about the way Lena had looked when she said she didn't have any friends that were actually hers. When he finished, Karen was quiet for a long moment. You know this is insane, right? She said finally. Yeah. And you know that getting involved with someone running from a billionaire is asking for trouble you absolutely do not need. Yeah. But you're going to help her anyway. Yeah, Karen sighed. You're just like Dad. Same stupid hero complex. Dad was a good man. Dad also got himself punched trying to break up a bar fight that had nothing to do with him. Good and smart aren't always the same thing. She paused. But I get it. I do. Just be careful, okay? Sophie needs you. I know. And Ethan, if this woman is half as smart as she sounds, she needs to know what she's up against. Marcus Hale doesn't seem like the type to just let this go. I know that too. After they hung up, Ethan sat in his truck and watched snow fall on the parking lot. Karen was right. This was insane. But somehow, driving away last night had felt more insane. Leaving Lena standing in that storm had felt impossible. He just hoped his instincts were right. When he got home that evening, the house smelled like cookies and something else. Something floral and sweet that he couldn't quite place. He could hear laughter from the kitchen, Sophie's high giggle mixing with Lena's lower, warmer laugh. He found them at the table, surrounded by cooling racks of chocolate chip cookies. Sophie had flour in her hair and frosting on her chin. Lena wore the yellow apron again and had a smudge of chocolate on her cheek. "Dad!" Sophie jumped up. "We made 17 dozen cookies." 17 dozen? Well, maybe not exactly 17, Lena admitted, but a lot. We got a little carried away. I can see that. Ethan grabbed a cookie from the nearest rack. It was still warm, the chocolate melty and perfect. "These are incredible." "Lena says baking is chemistry and art combined," Sophie announced, "which means I'm basically a scientist and an artist now." "Pretty sure that's not how it works, Bug." "That's exactly how it works. Lena said so." Ethan caught Lena's eye over Sophie's head, and she shrugged, smiling. After dinner, spaghetti that Sophie insisted on helping make, which meant tomato sauce ended up on 3 different walls, Lena helped with bath time while Ethan cleaned the kitchen. He could hear them upstairs, Sophie's voice asking endless questions while water ran in the tub. "Why did you want to marry someone you didn't love?" Ethan froze, dish halfway to the cabinet. "That's complicated," Lena's voice answered carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices because they think it's what they're supposed to do, not because it's what they want to do." "That sounds dumb." "It is dumb. Very dumb. My dad says you should always do what makes you happy as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else." "Your dad is very smart." "I know. He's the smartest person I know." "Well, you're smart too. And my teacher, Ms. Patterson. And the librarian who knows where every single book is without even looking. That's a lot of smart people in your life." "I'm lucky." A pause. "Are you going to stay here? Like, for real?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I'm still figuring things out." "But you could stay. We have an extra room, and Dad says we can't fill it with more books, even though I think that's exactly what we should do. And you make good pancakes, and you know how to do French braids, and you don't even get mad when Mr. Whiskers knocks things over. Those are all excellent points. Plus, I think my dad likes you. He smiles more when you're around." Ethan's hands stilled in the dishwater. "Does he?" Lena's voice was gentle. "Yeah. He doesn't smile much anymore. Not since Mom died. But today when he came home and saw the cookies, he smiled for real. I can tell the difference." Ethan set down the dish carefully, his throat tight. "Your mom must have been wonderful," Lena said softly. "She was. She used to sing me songs before bed, and she made up stories about a princess who saved herself instead of waiting for a prince. And she had really long hair that she let me brush, even though I wasn't very good at it. She sounds perfect." "She was perfect, but she got sick and then she died, and now it's just me and Dad, and sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like, and that makes me really sad." "Oh, honey." There was the sound of movement, fabric rustling. "It's okay to be sad. Missing someone you love doesn't ever really go away. You just learn to carry it with you." "Do you miss someone?" "I miss the person I used to be, I think, before I let other people tell me who I was supposed to be." "Well, I like the person you are now." "Thank you, Sophie. That means more than you know." Ethan stood at the sink, listening, his hands wet and his eyes burning. He'd been so focused on keeping things stable for Sophie, on making sure she had enough normal in her life to feel safe, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone else in the house. Someone who could answer her endless questions and braid her hair and make cookies on a Tuesday afternoon. Someone who made his daughter laugh like she used to, before grief taught her how heavy the world could be. Later, after Sophie was asleep and Lena had retreated to the guest room, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop and forced himself to do more research. Marcus Hale Industries, holdings in tech, real estate, pharmaceutical companies, a track record of aggressive expansion and hostile takeovers. Lawsuits settled out of court, competitors who'd mysteriously backed down from deals at the last minute. And Marcus himself, tall, handsome in a sharp-edged way, always photographed in perfectly tailored suits with an expression that suggested he knew something you didn't. Every article painted him as brilliant, ruthless, and utterly confident in his right to own whatever he wanted, including apparently Victoria Ashworth. Ethan found an interview from 6 months ago where Marcus discussed his engagement. "Victoria is everything I could want in a wife," he'd said. "Beautiful, intelligent, from excellent family. She understands the demands of my position and the importance of maintaining the right image. We're very well matched." Not one word about love, not one mention of who Victoria actually was beyond her usefulness to him. Ethan closed the laptop harder than necessary. A soft knock made him look up. Lena stood in the doorway, wrapped in an oversized cardigan she must have found in the guest room closet. "Sorry," she said. "I heard you moving around and thought, I don't know, that maybe you were up because of me." "Can't sleep?" "Not really. You?" "Too much on my mind." She crossed to the couch but didn't sit down. "I've been thinking about what your sister probably said when you told her about me." "How do you know I talked to my sister?" "You got very quiet after a phone call at lunch, and you have the look of someone who's been told they're making a terrible decision but is going to do it anyway." Ethan almost smiled. "You read people pretty well." "I spent 6 years learning how to navigate rooms full of people who smiled while they calculated your net worth. You get good at reading between the lines." She pulled the cardigan tighter. "I should go. Tomorrow. I've imposed enough, and the longer I stay, the more complicated this gets." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. A hotel, maybe. I could call my cousin. She never liked my mother's side of the family anyway. Or I could just figure it out. People do it all the time. People with credit cards and driver's licenses and phones do it all the time. You left with nothing. I could go to the police, file a report, get some kind of official protection." "And tell them what? That you ran away from your own wedding? They'll call it a domestic dispute and suggest couples counseling." Lena flinched. "Sorry," Ethan said. "That was harsh." "No, you're right. I'm from a very wealthy family about to marry an even wealthier man. The police will assume I'm having a breakdown or throwing a tantrum. They won't take me seriously." She finally sat down, leaving space between them on the couch. "I've been thinking about what Marcus will do. He won't come here himself, that's beneath him. But he'll send someone. Private investigators, probably. And my family will be looking too. My mother will want me found before this becomes a scandal." "How much time do you think you have?" "Maybe a few days, maybe less. They'll check hotels first, then friends' houses. They won't think to look in." She gestured around the modest living room. "Places like this, no offense. None taken. We're definitely flying under the radar of billionaire search parties." A smile flickered across her face, but it faded quickly. "I need to contact my bank, get access to my trust fund. It's mine, legally, but my father's the trustee and he'll fight me on it. I need to find a lawyer who isn't connected to my family. And I need to figure out where I can go that's far enough away but close enough to fight for what's mine." "That's a lot to figure out in a few days." "I know." She looked at him, and in the dim lamplight, her eyes were sad. "I'm sorry I brought this to your door. You've been nothing but kind, and all I've done is create problems for you. You made my daughter laugh today. You helped her with her homework without being asked. You made 17 dozen cookies and only set off the smoke alarm once. Twice," Lena corrected. "The second time you were in the garage. My point is, you're not a problem. You're a person who needs help. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment, studying him. "Why are you so calm about this? Most people would be freaking out." "Who says I'm not freaking out?" "You seem pretty steady to me." Ethan leaned back against the couch, suddenly tired. "When my wife died, I spent about 6 months in complete panic. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely function. Sophie was 6 and asking me when Mommy was coming home, and I had to keep explaining that she wasn't, and every time I said it, it broke me all over again. I was drowning." Lena didn't say anything, just listened. "One day, my sister found me sitting in the garage just staring at the wall. She asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was trying to figure out how to keep breathing. And she said something I've never forgotten. She said, 'You don't figure it out. You just do the next thing, and then the thing after that, until enough time has passed that breathing doesn't feel like work anymore. Did it work? Eventually. Took longer than I wanted, but yeah. I learned that you can't plan your way through everything. Sometimes you just have to take it one day at a time and trust that you'll figure it out as you go. That's terrifying. Yeah. But it's also kind of freeing, because if you don't have to have all the answers, you can just focus on making the next right choice. Lena pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small. I don't know what the next right choice is. Well, what do you want? What do I want? She repeated the question like she'd never considered it before. I want to stop feeling like I'm a piece on someone else's chessboard. I want to make decisions because they're what I want, not because they're what's expected. I want to wake up in the morning and not feel like I'm putting on armor just to face the day. That doesn't sound unreasonable. It felt unreasonable for a very long time. Everyone in my life made it very clear that what I wanted wasn't as important as what the family needed. And I believed them. I thought that was just how life worked when you came from money and connections. You played your part. What changed? She was quiet for so long that Ethan thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I watched Marcus fire his assistant 2 weeks before the wedding. This woman had worked for him for 8 years. She knew everything about his schedule, his preferences, his business. And he fired her because she got engaged, and he decided that meant she wouldn't be committed enough to her job anymore. She cried in the hallway, and he walked past her like she didn't exist. Lena's hands were shaking slightly. And I remember thinking, that's going to be me. In 5 years, 10 years, whenever I'm no longer useful or decorative enough, he'll trade me in for a newer model and move on without a second thought. And everyone will say it was my fault for not being enough. She looked at Ethan. That's when I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't spend the rest of my life waiting to be discarded. So you left. So I left, and walked straight into a snowstorm with no plan and no idea what I was doing. Not exactly my finest moment of strategic thinking. I don't know. Took guts to do what you did. Most people would have gone through with it. Most people didn't have a stranger stop and offer them a way out. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the house settling around them with its familiar creaks and sighs. You can stay, Ethan said finally. As long as you need to. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That's not fair to you or Sophie. Let me worry about what's fair to me and Sophie. You just focus on figuring out what comes next. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand you. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why are you doing this? Because you were standing in a snowstorm in a wedding dress, and I couldn't drive past. It's really that simple. She wiped at her eyes, laughing a little. Nothing about this is simple. No, Ethan agreed. But sometimes the right thing to do is obvious even when everything else is complicated. The next morning followed the same pattern as the day before. Sophie up early, excited to spend another day with Lena. Ethan left for work with the same instructions and the same knot of worry in his stomach. But this time, when he got to the warehouse, his supervisor called him into the office. Got a weird call this morning, Jim said, leaning against his desk. Guy asking questions about you, wanted to know your schedule, whether you'd called out recently, if you lived alone. Ethan's blood went cold. What did you tell him? Told him to go to hell. We don't give out employee information. Jim studied him. You in some kind of trouble, Cole? No, nothing like that. Because if you need time off, family emergency or whatever, you know you can talk to me. I appreciate that. But I'm fine. Everything's fine. Jim didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Ethan called Lena from his truck. She picked up on the first ring. What's wrong? Someone called my work asking questions about me. They're looking. He heard her sharp intake of breath. I should go, right now, before they... No, don't leave the house. Don't answer the door. I'm coming home. Ethan, you'll lose your job. I'll figure it out. Just stay inside and keep Sophie safe. He made it home in 12 minutes, breaking every speed limit between the warehouse and his house. Everything looked normal from the outside. No strange cars, no obvious surveillance. But as he pulled into the driveway, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. Fresh tire tracks in the snow, leading right up to his front door. Someone had been here. Ethan was out of the truck before the engine fully died, his boots crunching through snow as he sprinted toward the front door, his heart hammered against his ribs, every worst-case scenario flooding his mind at once. The door was still locked. That was good. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry. He fumbled with his keys, hands shaking, and burst inside. "Lena! Sophie!" "We're in here!" Lena's voice came from the kitchen, steady but strained. He found them at the table, Sophie working on a coloring book, while Lena sat rigid in her chair, her face pale. The cookies from yesterday were still out, but neither of them was eating. "Dad!" Sophie looked up, confused. "Why are you home? Did you forget something?" Ethan forced his breathing to slow, forced his voice to sound normal. "Yeah, Bug, left my lunch. Why don't you go upstairs and play for a bit? I need to talk to Lena about grown-up stuff." Sophie's face fell. Boring grown-up stuff? The most boring. She huffed but slid off her chair, taking her coloring book with her. They waited until her footsteps disappeared up the stairs, and her bedroom door clicked shut. "Tell me what happened," Ethan said quietly. Lena stood and walked to the window, her arms wrapped around herself. "About an hour after you left, a black SUV pulled up. Expensive, tinted windows. 2 men got out. They came to the door and knocked. Did you answer?" "Of course not. But they didn't leave right away. They walked around the house looking in windows. One of them took pictures with his phone. They were here for maybe 10 minutes before they got back in the car and drove away slowly, like they were making a point of being seen." Ethan moved to stand beside her, following her gaze out to the quiet street. Everything looked normal now, almost peaceful under fresh snow. "Private investigators?" "Probably. Marcus would hire the best. They're not going to just give up and leave." "Did they see you?" "I don't think so. I kept Sophie upstairs in her room with the door closed. But Ethan, they know someone's here. They saw your truck in the driveway this morning before you left. They'll run your plates, find out who you are, dig into your whole life." She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry. I should never have stayed. I should never have put you and Sophie in this position." "Stop apologizing." "How can I stop? You lost work today because of me. Men are stalking your house because of me. Sophie's routine is disrupted because of me. Everything I touch turns into chaos." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Her voice cracked. "My entire life has been one carefully managed disaster after another. I thought if I just did what I was told, if I just played the part perfectly enough, everything would work out. And now I've dragged you into my mess because I was too much of a coward to face it alone." Ethan caught her arm gently as she tried to turn away. "Hey, look at me." She did reluctantly. "You're not a coward," he said firmly. "You walked away from a life most people would kill for because you knew it was wrong for you. That's not cowardice, that's courage. And yeah, this situation is complicated and scary and not something I was planning for when I woke up 3 days ago. But you didn't drag me into anything. I chose to help. I'm still choosing to help." "Why?" The word came out raw, desperate. "Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know?" "Because I know enough. I know you make my daughter laugh. I know you can't watch her struggle with her math homework without helping. I know you cleaned the whole kitchen yesterday without being asked, and you fold towels the same weird way my grandmother used to. And I know that running from someone who treats you like property isn't cowardice. It's survival." Lena's composure crumbled. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control, but the tears came anyway. Ethan pulled her into a hug without thinking, and she collapsed against his chest, crying in quiet, broken sobs that shook her whole body. He held her, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, and let her cry. The house was quiet except for her breathing and the distant sound of Sophie singing upstairs, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. After a while, Lena pulled back, wiping at her face. "I'm getting your shirt wet." "I have other shirts," she laughed shakily. "You keep saying things like that, like none of this matters." "The shirt doesn't matter. You do." Something in her expression shifted, softened. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, really seeing him, and whatever she found there made her breath catch. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Then Sophie's voice called down from upstairs. Dad, can Lena come help me with my castle? The tower keeps falling over. The spell broke. Lena stepped back, creating distance, and cleared her throat. She needs help with her castle. Right. Yeah. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. I'll make some calls, figure out what we're dealing with. She nodded and headed upstairs, pausing at the bottom step. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For not treating me like I'm fragile. Everyone in my life has either wanted to control me or protect me, and both feel like cages. You see me as a person who can make her own choices, even when they're hard ones. That means everything. Before he could respond, she was gone, her footsteps soft on the stairs. Ethan stood alone in the kitchen, his heart doing complicated things in his chest that he absolutely did not have time to analyze right now. He called his sister first. Please tell me you're calling to say the runaway bride found somewhere else to stay, Karen answered. Can't do that. Ethan, they found her, Karen, or at least they found me. Private investigators showed up at my house this morning. She cursed colorfully. Are you okay? Is Sophie okay? We're fine. They didn't approach us, just snooped around. But they'll be back, and next time they might not be so subtle. You need to tell her to leave right now, before this gets worse. I can't do that. Yes, you can. You say, Victoria or Lena or whatever your name is, this isn't working out. You need to go. It's not complicated. She has nowhere to go, Karen. That's not your problem. Maybe it should be. The words came out harder than he intended. Maybe sometimes we have a responsibility to help people even when it's inconvenient or scary or not technically our problem. Karen was quiet for a beat. You care about her. I barely know her. That's not what I asked. Ethan rubbed his face tiredly. I don't know what I feel. I know she needs help and I'm in a position to give it. I know Sophie's happier than I've seen her in months, and I know that turning her away right now, when she's scared and alone, would feel like the worst kind of betrayal. Of who? Her or yourself? He didn't have an answer for that. Karen sighed. Okay, listen, you need to be smart about this. If they're sending investigators, they're building a case. They'll paint you as unstable, maybe dangerous. They'll say you're manipulating a vulnerable woman, or that you're after her money, or God knows what else. You need to protect yourself and Sophie. How? Document everything. Times, dates, what happened. Get Lena to write down her version of events, why she left, what Marcus did or said that made her feel unsafe. And for God's sake, Ethan, don't do anything that could be misinterpreted. Keep things appropriate. Professional. He thought about the way Lena had felt in his arms 20 minutes ago, the way her tears had soaked into his shirt, the way his heart had stuttered when she looked at him. Professional. Right. I'll be careful, he said. You better be. Because I love you, and I don't want to watch some billionaire destroy you for doing the right thing. After they hung up, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and started documenting everything, just like Karen suggested. Every detail he could remember, from finding Lena on the road to the investigators showing up this morning. It felt paranoid and excessive, but Karen was right. He needed to protect himself and Sophie. He was halfway through when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Cole? The voice was male, smooth, professional. My name is Richard Chen. I'm an attorney representing Mr. Marcus Hale. I was hoping we could have a brief conversation. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. About what? I think you know. My client is very concerned about Ms. Ashworth's well-being. She left under distressing circumstances, and we simply want to ensure she's safe and receiving proper care. She's not here. Mr. Cole, let's not play games. We know Ms. Ashworth has been staying at your residence. We're not interested in causing trouble for you. We simply want to facilitate Ms. Ashworth's safe return to her family. Then call her family. This has nothing to do with me. I'm afraid it has everything to do with you. Chen's voice hardened slightly. You've inserted yourself into a very delicate situation. Ms. Ashworth is not in her right mind. She's emotionally fragile, possibly experiencing a mental health crisis. Her family wants to get her the help she needs. Funny, she seemed perfectly rational to me. Did she mention her history of anxiety and depression, her previous hospitalization for emotional instability? Ethan's blood ran cold. That's a lie. Is it? Or is it possible that a woman you've known for 3 days hasn't shared her complete medical history with you? Chen paused, letting that sink in. Mr. Cole, I understand you think you're helping, but you're in over your head. Miss Ashworth comes from a complicated world with complicated circumstances. The kindest thing you can do is step aside and let the people who actually know her handle this situation. The people who know her are the reason she ran. That's her version of events. Have you considered there might be another side to this story? Ethan ended the call. His hands were shaking. He stared at the phone, Chen's words echoing in his head. Emotional instability, previous hospitalization. Was it possible? Could Lena be hiding something that significant? No. He'd seen her with Sophie, seen the way she handled stress, seen her make rational decisions even when she was terrified. Whatever Chen was selling, it was a lie designed to make Ethan doubt himself. But doubt was a poison. Once it got in, it spread. He found Lena upstairs in Sophie's room. They'd built an elaborate castle out of blocks and were now arranging plastic horses around it. The princess needs to inspect her kingdom, Sophie was saying seriously, and the horses need to be in formation. Military formation or parade formation? Lena asked, just as seriously. Both, obviously. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching them. Lena caught his eye and must have seen something in his expression because her smile faded. Sophie, why don't you work on the stables, she suggested. I'll be right back. They stepped into the hallway and Ethan closed Sophie's door partway. What happened? Lena asked. I got a call from Marcus's attorney, guy named Richard Chen. He said some things I need to ask you about. Her face went very still. What kind of things? He said you have a history of anxiety and depression. That you were hospitalized for emotional instability. Is that true? Lena closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were hard. I was hospitalized once, yes, 3 years ago, but not because I was unstable. Then why? Because I tried to call off my engagement the first time, and my mother decided I was having a breakdown. She had me committed to a private facility for 72 hours under the guise of exhaustion and stress. They pumped me full of sedatives and told everyone I was fragile. When I got out, the engagement was still on, and I had a medical record that could be used against me if I ever tried to leave again. Her voice shook with barely contained rage. So yes, I have a history of being controlled by people who care more about appearances than my actual well-being. Ethan felt sick. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, you should have asked. You barely know me. You'd be an idiot not to verify what people tell you. She crossed her arms. What else did Chen say? That you're in the middle of a mental health crisis, that your family wants to help you, that I'm in over my head and should step aside. He's right about one thing. You are in over your head. This is what they do, Ethan. They twist the narrative until everyone believes I'm the problem. Unstable Victoria, emotional Victoria, Victoria who can't make her own decisions and needs to be managed for her own good. I don't believe that. Why not? You've known me for 3 days. They've known me my whole life. Why would you take my word over theirs? Because I've seen you with Sophie. Because you haven't fallen apart even though you have every reason to. Because when you talk about Marcus and your family, you're not emotional. You're clear-eyed and rational about exactly what they are. He stepped closer. And because people who are actually unstable don't usually have the self-awareness to run away from situations that are destroying them. Lena's eyes filled with tears again. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? Believing in me when you have no reason to. Making me feel like maybe I'm not crazy for wanting a different life. Making me think that there are actually good people in the world who help because it's right, not because they want something in return. Why can't I do that? Because I'm going to start relying on it, and then when you inevitably realize this is too much trouble, it's going to break me. Ethan caught her hand. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because I'm stubborn as hell, and I don't quit on people, especially people who deserve better than what they've been given. She stared at their joined hands like she couldn't quite believe they were real. Marcus is going to come here. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when he does, It's going to get ugly. Let it get ugly. I've dealt with ugly before. Not like this. He'll threaten you. He'll threaten your job, your custody of Sophie, everything you care about. He'll make you wish you'd never stopped that night. Let him try. Lena pulled her hand away, and the loss of contact felt like a physical ache. You're not listening to me. I'm trying to protect you. And I'm trying to protect you. Guess we're at an impasse. This isn't a joke, Ethan. Do I look like I'm joking? They stood there in the hallway, neither willing to back down, until Sophie called out from her room. Lena, the horses are escaping. The absurdity of it broke the tension. Lena laughed despite herself, shaking her head. I have to deal with a horse emergency. Sounds serious. She started back toward Sophie's room, then paused. Ethan, thank you for asking me instead of just believing what they said. Most people wouldn't have given me that courtesy. Most people are idiots. That got a real smile. The rest of the day passed in a strange kind of suspended normalcy. Sophie was oblivious to the undercurrents, happy to have both adults home and available for castle construction, cookie eating, and several rounds of a board game she'd invented herself with rules that made no sense, but which she enforced ruthlessly. Ethan found himself watching Lena when she wasn't looking, the way she listened to Sophie's endless stories with genuine interest, the way she moved around his kitchen like she belonged there, the way she caught his eye across the room and something passed between them that felt like understanding. This was dangerous territory. He knew that. Getting attached to someone whose life was this complicated, who might disappear tomorrow or next week when reality caught up with them. Someone who came from a world so different from his that they might as well be different species. But watching her help Sophie with dinner, laughing when his daughter insisted they needed to use every pot in the kitchen to make spaghetti properly, Ethan couldn't bring himself to care about the danger. After Sophie went to bed, Ethan and Lena sat in the living room with the television on mute, neither of them really watching. I've been thinking, Lena said quietly, about what comes next. And? I need to stop reacting and start planning. Chen's call today was a warning shot. They're going to escalate. I need to be proactive instead of defensive. What are you thinking? I need a lawyer who isn't in Marcus's pocket. I need to access my trust fund. It's mine legally, and I'll fight my father for it if I have to. And I need to establish residency somewhere they can't just drag me back from. She looked at him. None of which I can do from your couch. You're not on my couch. You have a perfectly good guest room. You know what I mean. I can't hide here forever. It's not fair to you or Sophie, and eventually they will come here with more than investigators and polite phone calls. So what's the plan? I don't know yet, but I need to figure it out fast. She pulled her knees up, resting her chin on them. I've been completely dependent my whole life. My family controlled everything, where I lived, where I went to school, who I spent time with. And then Marcus was supposed to take over that role. I've never had to actually take care of myself. You're doing okay so far. I'm hiding in a stranger's house wearing borrowed clothes. That's not exactly thriving. It's surviving, which is the first step. She turned to look at him. How did you do it? After your wife died, how did you figure out how to keep going? Ethan was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Honestly, I didn't have a choice. Sophie needed me to keep going, so I did. Even when I wanted to give up, even when getting out of bed felt impossible, she was counting on me. So I just focused on that. One day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. Did it get easier? Eventually, not easier exactly. More like I got stronger at carrying the weight. He met her eyes. You'll get there too. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Being terrified and doing it anyway is pretty much the definition of courage. You keep saying things like that, things that make me believe I can actually do this. You can. How do you know? Because you already did the hardest part. You walked away. Everything else is just logistics. Lena smiled faintly. Just logistics, like evading a team of private investigators and fighting my family and Marcus for financial independence. See? Logistics. She laughed, and the sound was lighter than before. You're ridiculous. I've been called worse. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the house settling around them with its familiar sounds. Outside, snow began falling again, soft and steady, muffling the world. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said eventually. "Sure." "Why haven't you dated anyone since your wife died?" Ethan wasn't expecting that question. "That's complicated. Most things worth talking about are." He considered how to answer. "Part of it is Sophie. She's been through so much, and I didn't want to add more instability to her life. Part of it is I didn't think I was ready, and part of it is—" He trailed off. "Part of it is what?" "Part of it is I loved Emily so much that the idea of feeling that way about someone else seemed impossible. Like I'd be betraying her memory or something." "Do you still feel that way?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his chest shifted. "I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to realize that loving someone doesn't mean you can't ever love anyone else. That hearts are bigger than we think." Lena's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, full of possibilities neither of them was quite brave enough to name. "Lena!" A loud crash from outside made them both jump. Ethan was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. A dark SUV sat at the end of his driveway, headlights on, engine running. As he watched, the passenger door opened and a man stepped out. Not an investigator this time, Marcus Hale himself. He stood there in his expensive coat, perfectly groomed even at 10 o'clock at night, looking at Ethan's modest house like it personally offended him. Then he started walking toward the front door. Lena appeared at Ethan's shoulder, her face going white. "Oh God, he actually came." "Stay here," Ethan said. "Ethan, don't." But he was already moving, already opening the front door and stepping out onto the porch before Marcus could knock and wake Sophie. The cold hit him immediately, but he barely felt it. All his attention was focused on the man approaching his home with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Marcus stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at Ethan with an expression of cold appraisal. "Mr. Cole, I presume," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, utterly devoid of warmth. "We need to talk about Victoria." Ethan descended the porch steps slowly, deliberately putting himself between Marcus and his front door. The snow crunched under his boots, each step measured, controlled. He'd learned a long time ago that men like Marcus Hale respected shows of strength, not deference. "There's nothing to talk about," Ethan said evenly. "You should leave." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't think you understand the situation you've inserted yourself into, Mr. Cole. Victoria is my fiancée. She's unwell, and you're harboring her against her family's wishes. She's not your fiancée anymore. She walked away from that. And she's not unwell. She's making her own choices." "Is she?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying Ethan like a specimen under glass. "Or is she being influenced by someone who sees an opportunity? I've done my research on you. Widower, single father, warehouse worker making, what, $40,000 a year? I imagine Victoria's trust fund looks very appealing from where you're standing." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough. I know you live paycheck to paycheck in a house that needs a new roof. I know your daughter's school has called 3 times this year about unpaid lunch fees. I know you're one medical emergency away from bankruptcy." Marcus took a step closer. "I also know that if Victoria is here, it's because you're taking advantage of a vulnerable woman in crisis. That's called exploitation, Mr. Cole. Or in legal terms, it's called undue influence. That's not what's happening, isn't it? You found her on the side of the road, brought her to your home, isolated her from her support system. You're telling me you haven't discussed her financial situation, haven't talked about what she might do for you in exchange for your help? Go to hell." Marcus's smile widened. "There it is. The real you. The man who thinks he can play hero and rescue the damsel in distress." He looked past Ethan toward the house. "She watching? I imagine she is. Victoria always did have a weakness for grand gestures and emotional manipulation." "You're wrong about her." "Am I? I've known Victoria for 6 years. I've watched her navigate every social situation with perfect grace, say exactly what people want to hear, play whatever role the moment requires. She's very good at making people believe they're special to her. It's one of her most valuable skills." Ethan felt doubt creep in again, insidious and cold. He shoved it down. "If she's so good at manipulation, why did she run from you?" Because she's scared of commitment, because she has a pattern of sabotaging her own happiness, because she doesn't know what she wants and lashes out at the people trying to help her. Marcus's voice took on a gentler tone, almost sympathetic. Look, I understand why you'd want to believe you're helping, but you're making things worse. Victoria needs professional care, not some misguided rescue fantasy from a stranger. She doesn't need care. She needs freedom. Freedom to do what? Destroy her life? Throw away her family, her future, everything she's worked for? That's not freedom, Mr. Cole. That's self-destruction, and you're enabling it. The front door opened behind Ethan. He didn't have to turn around to know it was Lena. Marcus. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could hear the tremor underneath. You need to leave. Marcus's expression shifted when he saw her. Something possessive and cold flickered in his eyes before the smooth mask slid back into place. Victoria, thank God. Your mother has been worried sick. We all have. I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look exhausted, stressed. He gestured at her borrowed clothes, her bare feet. This isn't you, darling. Living like this, hiding in some stranger's house. Come home. We'll get you the help you need. Work through whatever this is together. There's nothing to work through. I'm not marrying you. You're not thinking clearly. The stress of the wedding, the pressure, I understand. We push too hard, too fast, but we can slow down, postpone things, whatever you need. I don't need time, Marcus. I need you to accept that this is over. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You're throwing away everything we built together. 6 years, Victoria. 6 years of building a life, making plans, creating something meaningful. And you're willing to destroy all of that because of what? Cold feet? A moment of panic? It wasn't a moment. It was 6 years of slowly realizing I was disappearing inside a life someone else designed for me. That's the anxiety talking, the depression. You're not well, Victoria. You haven't been well for a long time. And instead of accepting help, you run away to play house with some blue-collar nobody who wouldn't know a trust fund from a checking account. Ethan took a step forward, but Lena's hand on his shoulder stopped him. Don't talk about him like that, she said quietly. Ethan has shown me more kindness in 3 days than you showed me in 6 years. He doesn't see me as an asset to acquire or a problem to manage. He sees me as a person. That's something you've never been capable of. Marcus's composure finally cracked. A person? You're a senator's daughter with a trust fund worth $20 million. You don't get to just walk away from that and pretend you're some ordinary person. That's not how this works. Watch me. If you don't come home tonight, I'll make sure your family cuts you off completely. Your father will revoke your trust fund access. Your mother will tell everyone you had a breakdown. You'll have nothing. Then I'll have nothing. But at least it will be mine. Marcus stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. For a man accustomed to controlling everything through money and power, the concept of someone choosing nothing over his version of everything seemed incomprehensible. You're making a mistake, he said finally. The biggest mistake of your life. No, Lena replied. Agreeing to marry you was the mistake. This is me fixing it. Marcus turned his attention back to Ethan, and the look in his eyes was pure calculation. You think you've won something here? You think playing protector makes you noble? Let me tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to leave here tonight, and tomorrow my lawyers are going to file a petition claiming Victoria is mentally incompetent and needs a conservator. Her father will support it. Her doctors will testify about her history of instability. And you, mister, Cole will be painted as exactly what you are, an opportunist who took advantage of a vulnerable woman. Try it, Ethan said. See how that works out for you. I will. And when I'm done, you'll lose everything. Your job, your reputation, maybe even custody of your daughter when they start asking what kind of father brings unstable strangers into his home around his child. Marcus smiled coldly. You have no idea the resources I can bring to bear. I will destroy you so thoroughly that you'll wish you'd driven past that night. Get off my property. Or what? You'll call the police? Please do. I'd love to explain to them how you're harboring someone's fiancée against her family's wishes. She's not property. She can be wherever she chooses to be. We'll see what a judge says about that. Marcus took a step back toward his SUV, then paused. Victoria, last chance. Come home now. We'll call this an unfortunate episode brought on by wedding stress, and we can all move forward. Or stay here and watch everything you've ever known burn to the ground. Lena's hand tightened on Ethan's shoulder. Goodbye, Marcus. He studied her for a long moment, and something almost like genuine emotion flickered across his face. I loved you, you know. In my own way, I would have given you everything. You would have given me everything except myself. Marcus shook his head slowly, like she was a child who had disappointed him. You'll regret this. Probably, but it'll be my regret to carry. He climbed into his SUV without another word. The engine roared to life, and he pulled away slowly, deliberately, making sure they watched him leave. Ethan and Lena stood in the snow until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then Lena's knees buckled, and Ethan caught her before she could fall. I've got you, he murmured, guiding her back into the house. I've got you. Inside, she collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Not from cold, but from the adrenaline crash of facing down the man she'd run from. Ethan grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders, then sat beside her. He meant it, Lena said quietly. Everything he said about destroying you, going after your custody of Sophie, he'll do it. He has the money, and the lawyers, and the connections to make your life hell. Let him try. Ethan, you don't understand. Marcus doesn't make empty threats. If he says he's going to file a conservatorship petition, he will, and he'll stack the deck so thoroughly that I won't have a chance. Then we fight it. With what? I don't have access to my money. I don't have a lawyer. I don't even have identification. Everything was in my purse at the hotel. She laughed bitterly. I'm exactly what he said I am. A woman with nothing, dependent on the kindness of a stranger who's going to pay the price for helping me. Stop that. Stop letting him define you. He's not wrong, though, is he? I walked away with nothing. I didn't think it through, didn't plan, just ran like a scared child. And now I've made you a target because I was too selfish to consider the consequences. Ethan caught her chin gently, making her look at him. Listen to me. What you did took incredible courage. You saw your future laid out in front of you, comfortable, secure, empty, and you chose uncertainty instead. That's not selfish. That's brave. It doesn't feel brave, it feels terrifying. Good things usually do. They sat close together on the couch, the blanket wrapped around both of them now. Lena rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, and he could feel her gradually stop shaking. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Now? We make a plan, a real one. Tomorrow we find you a lawyer who isn't connected to Marcus or your family. We get you new identification. We figure out how to access your trust fund legally. And we document everything Marcus just said. The threats, the intimidation, all of it. That's a lot of expensive things I can't pay for. We'll figure it out. Maybe there's legal aid or lawyers who work on contingency, or you'll try to pay for it yourself even though you can barely afford your own bills. Ethan didn't deny it. Lena lifted her head to look at him. Why are you like this? Why do you care so much about someone you barely know? I keep telling you, No, really. Why? Most people would have driven past that night. Most people would have called the police or dropped me at a shelter or found a dozen other ways to help that didn't involve this level of personal risk. But you brought me into your home, let me bond with your daughter, put yourself in Marcus's crosshairs. Why? Ethan was quiet for a moment, trying to find words for something he barely understood himself. When Emily was dying, she made me promise something. She said, don't let grief make you small. Don't let it close you off from the world. She was worried that after she was gone, I'd just shut down, focus only on Sophie and work and surviving, and forget how to live. He ran a hand through his hair, remembering those final conversations, the way Emily's voice had gotten weaker, but her convictions had stayed strong. For 2 years, I broke that promise. I went to work, came home, took care of Sophie, repeat. I was going through the motions but not really living, and then you were standing in that snowstorm and something in my chest just cracked open, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. Lena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I remind you of being alive. You remind me that life is supposed to be more than just surviving, that taking risks and helping people and opening yourself up to possibility, even when it's scary, even when it might end badly, that's what makes us human. What if it does end badly? What if Marcus does everything he threatened? What if I cost you everything? Then at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have done something that mattered instead of just existing. She kissed him. It was sudden and desperate and tasted like salt from her tears. Ethan froze for half a second, his mind screaming about complications and bad timing and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then he kissed her back, his hand coming up to cradle her face, and everything else fell away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena pressed her forehead against his. "That was stupid," she whispered. "Probably. We can't do this. It's too complicated. I'm too complicated." "I know. Marcus will use it against us. He'll say you were manipulating me, that this proves you had ulterior motives." "I know that too. So we should stop, right now, before this gets any more tangled." Ethan pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you and Sophie safe. What you want always matters. That's the whole point of leaving, wasn't it? To start making choices based on what you want instead of what everyone else wants for you." "This is different." "How?" "Because it's not just my life anymore. It's yours, Sophie's. I can't be selfish about this. And if what I want is to take the risk, if I want to see where this goes, complications and all..." Lena searched his face like she was looking for cracks, for signs that he didn't mean it. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me. Help me understand." She pulled away, putting distance between them, and wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. "If we do this, if we let this become something, Marcus won't just go after you legally. He'll dig into every corner of your life. He'll find every mistake you've ever made, every moment of weakness, every secret you've ever kept. He'll use it all against you, and he won't stop until he's destroyed you completely." "I don't have any secrets worth destroying me over." "Everyone has secrets. Everyone has moments they're not proud of, and Marcus is very good at taking those moments and twisting them into something dark." She looked at him with something like desperation. "I've seen him do it to business rivals, to former employees, to anyone who got in his way. He's relentless and ruthless, and he has unlimited resources. Going up against him when he's simply annoyed is dangerous. Going up against him when he feels personally betrayed? That's suicidal." "So what are you saying? That we pretend this didn't happen? That we go back to keeping our distance and ignoring whatever this is between us?" "I'm saying we need to be smart. Strategic. We can't give him ammunition." Ethan stood up, frustration bleeding through his careful control. "I'm not very good at strategic. I'm a guy who stops for hitchhikers in wedding dresses and lets strangers into my home, and apparently kisses women who are running from billionaires. Strategic isn't really my strong suit." "Then learn, because the alternative is watching Marcus destroy everything you've built. Maybe some things are worth the risk." "Sophie isn't a risk you get to take. She's 8 years old and she's already lost her mother. She can't lose you too because you decided to play hero for someone you barely know." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Lena's face crumpled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." "No, you're right." Ethan's voice was quiet. "Sophie comes first. Always. And getting involved with you, letting this become something more, that puts her at risk. You're right." He could see the exact moment his agreement hurt her, even though it was what she'd been arguing for. She nodded once, sharp and final, and stood up. "I should go to bed. Tomorrow I'll start making calls, finding resources, figuring out my next move. The sooner I'm out of your house, the sooner you and Sophie are safe." "Lena." "Good night, Ethan." She disappeared upstairs, leaving him alone in the living room with the ghost of her kiss still on his lips and the certainty that he'd just made either the smartest or stupidest decision of his life. He sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, trying to untangle the knot in his chest. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made him look up. Sophie stood in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Dad? I heard voices. Are you and Lena fighting?" Ethan held out his arms and she climbed into his lap, all warm sleepiness and trust. "No, Bug. We're not fighting, just talking about grown-up stuff." "Is Lena leaving?" "Eventually, yeah. She has things she needs to take care of." Sophie was quiet for a moment, fiddling with her rabbit's ear. "I like her." "I know you do. She's nice to me. Not the way people are nice because they feel bad about Mom. She's just nice. Like she actually likes hanging out with me. She does like hanging out with you. Do you like her? Dangerous question. Yeah, I do. Then why does she have to leave? Because her life is complicated right now, and she needs to figure some things out on her own. Sophie considered this with the seriousness only an 8-year-old could bring to late-night conversations. Is it because of that mean man who came tonight? Ethan's blood went cold. You were awake? I heard a car. I looked out my window and saw you talking to someone. He looked mean. How much did you hear? Not much, just voices, but I could tell he was mean from the way he stood, like he thought he was better than everybody. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Yeah, Ethan admitted. He's part of why things are complicated for Lena. Is he going to hurt her? Not if I can help it. Sophie snuggled closer. You're good at helping people. You helped Mrs. Patterson when her car broke down, and you help me all the time with everything. You could help Lena too. I'm trying, Bug. You should try harder. She needs you. Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan carried Sophie back upstairs and tucked her into bed, pulling the blankets up to her chin the way she liked. Dad? She murmured, already half asleep. If Lena stays, we could be like a family, a new kind of family. That would be okay, wouldn't it? Mom wouldn't be mad? His throat closed up. No, sweetheart. Mom wouldn't be mad. She'd want us to be happy. I'm happy when Lena's here. Are you happy? Yeah, I am. Then maybe she should stay. If only it were that simple. After Sophie drifted off, Ethan stood in the hallway outside the guest room. Light showed under the door. He could hear movement inside, Lena pacing probably, her mind racing the way his was. He raised his hand to knock, then lowered it. What would he even say? She was right about the risks. She was right that getting involved would give Marcus ammunition. She was right that Sophie had to come first, but she was also in there, alone, probably convinced she'd ruined everything and had nowhere left to turn. Ethan knocked softly. The movement inside stopped. Then the door opened, and Lena stood there in borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt, her eyes red from crying. I can't do this, she said immediately. I can't be what you and Sophie need. I'm a disaster, Ethan. Everything I touch turns to chaos. That's not true. Isn't it? My engagement is destroyed. My family will disown me. Marcus is threatening to ruin you. What part of that isn't chaos? The part where you chose yourself over a life that was killing you. The part where you make my daughter laugh for the first time in months. The part where you kiss me like maybe, despite everything, there's something here worth fighting for. We can't fight for it. You said so yourself. Sophie comes first. Sophie does come first, always. But you know what she said to me just now? She said she's happy when you're here. She asked if you could stay, if we could be a family. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. She doesn't understand what she's asking for. Maybe. Or maybe she understands better than we do that sometimes the right choice is the scary one. Sometimes you have to take the risk even when you can't see how it ends. And if it ends badly, if Marcus makes good on his threats, if you lose your job or your custody or everything you've worked for, then we deal with it together. But Lena, I spent 2 years playing it safe, avoiding risk, keeping my world small and controlled, and I was miserable. I was surviving but not living. You changed that. In 3 days, you reminded me what it feels like to actually care about something beyond just getting through the day. That's not fair. You can't put that on me. I'm not putting it on you. I'm telling you that whatever this is between us, it's real. And yeah, it's complicated and messy and potentially disastrous, but so is everything worth having. Lena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm so scared. I'm scared of hurting you, of hurting Sophie, of dragging you into my mess and watching it destroy you. I'm scared too, terrified actually, but I'm more scared of letting fear make my decisions, of looking back in 5 years and knowing I had a chance at something real and walked away because it was safer. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and stronger than you think. I know you'd sacrifice your own happiness to protect people you care about. I know when you smile at Sophie, it's genuine. And I know when you kissed me, it felt like coming home. She let out a sob and collapsed against him. Ethan wrapped his arms around her and held on tight while she cried into his chest, all the fear and stress and uncertainty pouring out. "We're really doing this?" she whispered eventually. "Even knowing what it might cost?" "We're doing this." "You're insane." "Probably. But you make me want to be brave enough to be insane." She pulled back enough to look at him, her eyes searching his face. Okay, we fight. Together. But we do it smart. We document everything, we find good lawyers, and we build a case so strong that Marcus can't tear it down. Agreed. And we protect Sophie first, always. If at any point this starts affecting her negatively, I walk away. No arguments. Lena, I mean it, Ethan. I won't let her pay the price for my choices. Promise me. He wanted to argue, to say it wouldn't come to that, but the determination in her eyes told him this was non-negotiable. I promise, he said finally. She kissed him again, softer this time, with less desperation and more certainty. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. We're probably making a huge mistake, she murmured. Probably, but at least we're making it together. Morning came too early and too bright, sunlight streaming through windows and illuminating a world that looked deceptively peaceful under fresh snow. Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet voices in the kitchen. For a moment, still caught between sleep and waking, he let himself imagine this was normal, that Lena belonged here, that the complications didn't exist, that they were just a family starting another ordinary day. Then reality crashed back in, bringing with it the memory of Marcus's threats and the knowledge that today they had to start fighting back. He found Lena and Sophie at the kitchen table, working on what appeared to be a very serious blueprint drawn in crayon. We're designing a garden, Sophie announced, for the backyard. Lena says we can grow tomatoes and strawberries and maybe even pumpkins if we start planning now. Ethan caught Lena's eye. She gave him a small smile that said she knew they might not be here to see those pumpkins grow, but she was giving Sophie something to look forward to anyway. Sounds like a good plan, he said, pouring himself coffee. But right now, Lena and I need to make some important phone calls. Think you can work on that blueprint in the living room for a bit? Sophie's face fell slightly, but she gathered her crayons with the resigned acceptance of a child who'd learned that adult business came first. Fine, but don't forget we're planning for pumpkins. Wouldn't dream of it, Bug. Once Sophie was settled in front of the television with her drawing, Ethan and Lena sat at the kitchen table with his laptop between them. Okay, Lena said, her voice all business despite the shadows under her eyes. First priority is getting me proper identification. I need to go to the DMV, get a replacement license. That requires my birth certificate, which is probably at my parents' house. Can you get it without them knowing? Maybe. I have a key to the house, or I did before I left my keys with everything else. But there's a spare hidden in the garden. If they haven't changed it, I could get in while they're out. That's risky. Everything about this is risky, but I need that birth certificate to get ID, and I need ID to access my bank accounts and establish legal residency. She pulled up a legal aid website on the laptop. Second priority is finding a lawyer who can help me fight the conservatorship petition if Marcus files it. I'm looking for someone who handles family law and mental health advocacy. They spent the next 2 hours making calls and sending emails. Most lawyers wanted retainers Lena couldn't pay. Several recognized the Ashworth name and politely declined to take a case against Marcus Hale. But finally, a woman named Patricia Moreno called back. I got your message, Patricia said, her voice warm but professional. Tell me what's going on. Lena explained everything. The wedding, running away, Marcus's threats, her family's control over her trust fund. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of understanding. Okay, Patricia said when Lena finished. Here's what I can do. I work on contingency for cases like this, which means I don't get paid unless we win. In this case, we're going to win. What Marcus is trying to do, using conservatorship as a weapon to control you, that's exactly the kind of abuse the court system is supposed to protect against. Relief flooded Lena's face. You'll take my case? I'll take your case. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to get a psychiatric evaluation from an independent doctor, someone not connected to your family or Marcus. We need documentation proving you're of sound mind and capable of making your own decisions. How do I find someone like that? I have a colleague who does these evaluations. She's fair, thorough, and her testimony carries weight in court. I'll set up an appointment for tomorrow if that works for you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a fight ahead of us. But Ms. Ashworth, from what you've told me, you've got a strong case. Your trust fund is yours legally, and your father's role as trustee doesn't give him the right to withhold it from you indefinitely. As for the conservatorship threat, we'll file a preemptive motion establishing your competence. Make it much harder for Marcus to claim otherwise. After they hung up, Lena sat back in her chair looking dazed. I have a lawyer, an actual lawyer who believes me. Told you we'd figure it out. This is real, isn't it? I'm actually doing this, fighting back instead of running. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. You're doing it, and you're not alone. The psychiatric evaluation the next day was grueling. Doctor. Sarah Chen was kind but thorough, asking questions about Lena's mental health history, her decision to leave Marcus, her current state of mind. She administered cognitive tests and had Lena fill out questionnaires designed to assess depression, anxiety, and decision-making capacity. Ethan waited in the lobby, Sophie beside him working on her garden blueprint. Every time the office door opened, he looked up, hoping to see Lena, hoping the evaluation was going well. After 3 hours, Lena finally emerged. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. How did it go? Ethan asked. She said I'm one of the most cognitively sound people she's evaluated in years. Her exact words were that my decision to leave Marcus showed excellent judgment and self-preservation instincts. Lena's voice shook slightly. She's going to write a report stating I'm fully competent to make my own legal and financial decisions. Sophie looked up from her drawing. Does that mean you can stay? It means I can fight to stay, Lena said, crouching down to Sophie's level. But it might take some time. That's okay. We're good at waiting, right, Dad? Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, Bug. We're good at waiting. The next few weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Lena worked with Patricia on legal strategy while Ethan kept working at the warehouse, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sophie seemed to accept Lena's presence as natural now, incorporating her into bedtime routines and homework sessions like she'd always been there. Marcus's lawyers filed the conservatorship petition exactly when he said they would. But Patricia was ready, hitting back with Dr. Chen's evaluation and a motion to dismiss based on Lena's demonstrated competence. The judge set a hearing date for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Lena managed to retrieve her birth certificate from her parents' house. The spare key was still there, hidden under the third flower pot from the left, just like it had been since she was 16. She slipped in and out while they were at a charity luncheon, taking only what was hers, documents, a few photos, the jewelry her grandmother had left her that her mother had tried to keep. With her birth certificate, she got a new driver's license. With the license, she opened a bank account separate from her family's control. Small victories, but each one felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. The hearing arrived on a gray March morning. Ethan called in sick to work, his third absence in a month, which his supervisor noted with increasing concern, and went with Lena to the courthouse. Sophie stayed with Karen, who'd driven up from Boston specifically to help. You've got this, Karen had said to Lena that morning, surprising them both. Any woman who can walk away from a billionaire in a wedding dress has more spine than most people will ever have. In the courtroom, Marcus sat with his team of lawyers, all expensive suits and confident expressions. Lena's parents were there too, her mother looking perfectly composed in pearls and a designer suit, her father's face set in disapproving lines. Patricia presented their case methodically. Dr. Chen's evaluation. Testimony from Ethan about Lena's rational behavior and sound decision-making. Records showing that Lena had been managing her own apartment and finances before the engagement. Character witnesses who spoke to her intelligence and capability. Marcus's lawyers tried to paint a picture of instability, the previous hospitalization, the sudden flight from the wedding, her current living situation with a man she barely knew. But Patricia tore those arguments apart with precision. Ms. Ashworth was hospitalized once, yes, against her will, by a mother who wanted to control her choices. The medical records from that stay show no evidence of mental illness. only evidence of a young woman being medicated into compliance. As for leaving her wedding, that shows clarity, not confusion. She recognized she was entering a relationship that would diminish her autonomy, and she had the courage to stop it. And her current living situation, she's staying with a family friend while she establishes independence. That's not instability, that's resourcefulness. The judge listened to everything with a neutral expression that gave nothing away. When both sides had finished presenting their cases, she took off her glasses and looked directly at Lena. Ms. Ashworth, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why did you leave your wedding? Lena stood, her hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. Because I realized that if I married Marcus, I would spend the rest of my life being managed instead of living. Every decision would be filtered through what he wanted, what my family wanted, what looked good for the family image. I would become a prop in someone else's story instead of the author of my own. And you don't think that's a rather dramatic way to view a marriage to a successful man who could provide for you? With respect, Your Honor, providing for me financially isn't the same as respecting me as a person. Marcus told me once that he chose me because I was beautiful, came from the right family, and understood my role. Not because he loved me or valued my thoughts or wanted a partner. He wanted an accessory. I want to be a person. The judge studied her for a long moment. And this person you're staying with, Mr. Cole, what is the nature of that relationship? Ethan felt his stomach drop. This was it. The moment Marcus's lawyers had been waiting for, the chance to paint them as inappropriate and prove Lena's judgment was impaired. But Lena didn't hesitate. Ethan saved my life. Not dramatically, not in a movie way, but really. He saw someone who needed help and he helped without asking for anything in return. He gave me safety when I had nowhere to go. He treated me with respect when everyone else in my life was treating me like property. And yes, we've become close. We care about each other. But that doesn't make me incompetent. It makes me human. Your Honor, Marcus's lead attorney stood. This relationship clearly demonstrates poor judgment. Ms. Ashworth abandoned a 6-year engagement and immediately attached herself to the first man who showed her kindness. That's textbook instability. Or, Patricia countered, it's textbook recognizing healthy relationships versus controlling ones. Ms. Ashworth didn't jump from Marcus to Ethan. She jumped from Marcus to freedom and found along the way that some people offer support without demanding ownership in return. The judge held up a hand for silence. I've heard enough. I'll issue my ruling by the end of the week. They filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. Marcus caught up with them in the hallway, his lawyers trailing behind. Victoria, he said, his voice low, this isn't over. Even if you win today, I can make your life very difficult. You already have, Lena replied, but I'm learning that difficult and worthwhile aren't mutually exclusive. You'll regret this. Maybe, but it'll be my regret made from my choice. That's more than you ever offered me. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, then shook his head and walked away. Lena's mother approached next, her expression carefully neutral. Victoria, this has gone far enough. Come home. We can work this out privately. There's nothing to work out, Mother. I'm not coming back. You're throwing away everything we built for you, the connections, the status, the security. For what? To play house with some common laborer? Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Lena beat him to it. His name is Ethan. He's a good father, a decent man, and he's shown me more genuine care in a few weeks than you've shown me in 28 years. So yes, I'm choosing that over the gilded cage you call security. Her mother's composure cracked slightly. You always were an ungrateful child. No, I was a child you never bothered to actually know. There's a difference. She walked away without looking back, Ethan following close behind. His heart was hammering, but he felt strangely proud. Lena had faced down everyone who'd tried to control her and held her ground. 3 days later, Patricia called with the judge's decision. We won, she said simply. The petition for conservatorship is denied. The judge ruled that Ms. Ashworth is fully competent to manage her own affairs. And she issued an order requiring your father to provide access to your trust fund within 30 days or face contempt charges. Lena's knees gave out. Ethan caught her, holding her up while she processed the news. We won? She repeated. You won. You're free, Victoria. Legally, financially, completely. After they hung up, Lena turned to Ethan and burst into tears. But this time they were tears of relief, of joy, of something that felt dangerously like hope. "I'm free," she whispered against his chest. "I'm actually free." "You're free." Sophie chose that moment to barrel into the kitchen, home from school with Karen. "Why is Lena crying? Is she sad?" "No, Bug," Ethan said, unable to stop smiling. "She's happy." "Grown-ups cry when they're happy?" "Sometimes, when something really good happens." Sophie considered this, then hugged Lena's legs. "I'm glad you're happy. Does this mean you can stay forever?" Lena knelt down, wiping her eyes. "Would you like that? If I stayed?" "Duh, obviously. We still have to plant that garden, and Dad burns everything he cooks, and you're really good at helping with homework without just giving me the answers." "Those are very good reasons. Plus I like you, and Dad likes you, and even Mr. Whiskers likes you, and he doesn't like anybody." Lena laughed through her tears. "Well, if Mr. Whiskers approves, how can I say no?" Over the next few weeks, Lena's life slowly came back into her own hands. The trust fund access went through, giving her financial independence for the first time in her life. She paid Patricia's fees, paid Ethan back for everything he'd spent helping her despite his protests, and started looking at apartments in town. But something kept stopping her from actually signing a lease. It was Sophie who finally said what they were all thinking. They were planting the garden together on a warm April afternoon, soil under their fingernails and sun on their faces, when she looked up from the tomato seedlings. "Why are you looking for an apartment?" Sophie asked Lena. "You live here." "Well, I've been staying here, but this is your and your dad's home. I can't just move in permanently without—" "Why not?" "Because it's more complicated than that, sweetie. Grown-ups always say things are complicated when they're actually really simple." Sophie turned to Ethan. "Dad, do you want Lena to move out?" Ethan, who'd been carefully not participating in this conversation, looked up from the strawberry plants. "That's not really my decision to make." "Yes, it is. It's your house. It's also Lena's choice where she wants to live." Sophie huffed in frustration. "You're both being dumb. Lena, do you want to leave?" "No," Lena admitted quietly. "I don't want to leave." "Dad, do you want her to leave?" "No," Ethan said, meeting Lena's eyes across the garden bed. "I don't want her to leave." "Then stop being dumb and just let her stay. Problem solved." Sophie went back to her tomatoes like she'd just resolved a complex diplomatic crisis. Lena started laughing, and Ethan joined in, and soon they were both sitting in the dirt, laughing at the absurdity of being lectured on relationships by an 8-year-old who wasn't wrong. "She makes a good point," Lena said eventually. "She usually does. It's annoying." "So what do we do about it?" Ethan stood and offered her his hand, pulling her to her feet. "I think we stop overthinking it. You stay. We figure out the rest as we go. Just like we've been doing." "Just like that?" "Just like that." "What about people talking? What about Marcus or my family or anyone who wants to make this into something ugly?" "Let them talk. We know the truth. That's what matters." Lena looked around at the garden they were building, at the house that had become home, at Sophie contentedly arranging seedlings, at Ethan covered in soil and looking at her like she was the best thing that had happened to him in years. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll stay." Sophie cheered and immediately began planning where they'd plant the pumpkins. Summer came to their small corner of New England like a gentle exhale. The garden flourished under Lena's careful attention, producing more tomatoes than 3 people could reasonably eat. Sophie spent her days outside, brown from the sun and happier than Ethan had seen her since before Emily died. Lena found work at the local library, a quiet job that let her use her art history degree and gave her interaction with people who didn't care about her family name or trust fund. She came home with stories about patrons and book recommendations and slowly built a life that was entirely her own choosing. Marcus sent one final letter through his lawyers, releasing Lena from any further claim on her and stating coldly that he considered the matter closed. She read it once and threw it away without a second thought. Her parents were harder to let go of. Her mother called occasionally, always with the same script about how Victoria was throwing away her potential and embarrassing the family. Her father never called at all. It hurt, Lena admitted to Ethan one night, but it also felt like setting down a weight she'd been carrying her whole life. "They never really saw me anyway," she said. "They saw the daughter they wanted, not the person I actually am. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe, Ethan agreed, holding her close, but it's okay to grieve what you wish you'd had, even while accepting what actually was. On a warm evening in late August, Ethan found Lena in the garden. The sun was setting, painting everything gold, and she was picking tomatoes for dinner. Sophie was inside, supposedly doing homework, but more likely reading under her covers with a flashlight. "Hey," he said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned back against him, relaxed and content. "Hey yourself." "I was thinking about something. Dangerous." He laughed against her hair. "Sophie drew a new picture today. It's on the fridge." "I saw it. Very advanced use of perspective for a 9-year-old. 8. She won't be 9 until October." He paused. "Did you notice what she drew? The garden, right? Look closer when we go inside." Later, making dinner together in the kitchen that had become their shared space, Lena studied the drawing more carefully. It showed the garden, the house, 3 figures standing together, one tall, one medium, one small, and above them, in Sophie's careful handwriting, "My family." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "She asked me if it was okay," Ethan said quietly, "to call us a family. I told her that families come in all different shapes, and if we feel like family, then that's what we are." "And what do we feel like?" Lena asked, even though she knew the answer. Ethan turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "We feel like home, like the family I didn't know I was allowed to build, like the second chance I didn't think I deserved." "I love you," Lena said, the words that had been sitting in her chest for weeks finally spilling out. "I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you, both of you, this life we're building." "It's not crazy," Ethan said, kissing her softly. "Or if it is, it's the best kind of crazy. And I love you too. Have since that first morning when you made pancakes and didn't set off the smoke alarm. I set it off twice that day. Well, nobody's perfect." They stood together in the kitchen, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of a life being built from scratch. "Sophie's homework scattered on the table, mister. Whiskers sleeping on his favorite chair, tomatoes from the garden waiting to be made into sauce. The drawing of their family held by magnets to the refrigerator. This wasn't the life Lena had been raised to expect. There were no galas or society pages, no wealth or status, or any of the things her family had told her mattered. But there was laughter and honest work, and a man who saw her as a person worth knowing. There was a little girl who'd adopted her into a family constellation and didn't care where she came from, only that she stayed. And there was freedom, the freedom to choose her own path, make her own mistakes, build her own definition of what mattered." Sophie wandered into the kitchen, book in hand. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Maybe a little," Ethan admitted. "That's okay. Miss Patterson says people who love each other should tell each other." She climbed into her chair at the table. "Can we have spaghetti for dinner?" "Again? We had it twice this week." "I know, but Lena makes it really good. Better than the box kind." "Everything's better than the box kind, Bug." They made dinner together, the 3 of them moving around the kitchen in practiced rhythm. Lena made her sauce from the garden tomatoes while Ethan boiled pasta, and Sophie set the table with elaborate care, making sure the forks were exactly parallel to the knives. After dinner, after dishes and homework and bath time, after Sophie was tucked in bed with her ritual of 2 stories and a glass of water and the nightlight positioned just right, Ethan and Lena sat on the porch watching fireflies dance across the lawn. "I never thought I'd have this," Lena said quietly. "This feeling of belonging somewhere, of being chosen, not for what I could offer, but for who I actually am." "You deserve it," Ethan said. "You deserve all of it and more. So do you. You've spent so long taking care of everyone else, making sure Sophie was okay, just surviving. You deserve to actually live." "I am living. This, right here, this is living." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, listening to the sounds of a summer night. Somewhere in the distance, someone was having a barbecue. A dog barked. Kids rode bikes in frantic circles, racing the sunset. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary life. And for the first time in either of their memories, ordinary felt like exactly enough. Inside, Sophie had gotten out of bed and was peeking through the window at them, smiling at the sight of her father and Lena sitting together in the gathering dark. She picked up a crayon and added to her garden blueprint, sketching in a swing set and a small shed for tools and 3 figures standing together under the sun. She titled it carefully, Our Forever Garden. Then she went to bed for real, knowing that tomorrow there would be more planting to do, more growing to tend to, more of this beautiful, ordinary life to live. The woman who'd run through a snowstorm in a wedding dress no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, braver, more wholly herself than she'd ever been allowed to be before. Someone who'd chosen uncertainty over comfort, and found on the other side not chaos, but home. And the man who'd stopped his truck on a dark road that night had found something too. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and different, and just as precious. A second chance at love, at family, at believing that the world could still surprise you with its capacity for grace. They were building something together now, not perfect, not without complications or hard days or moments of doubt, but theirs. Chosen. Real. A family grown not from obligation or expectation or any traditional path, but from courage and kindness and the simple radical act of seeing each other clearly and deciding to stay. The pumpkins would grow by October. The garden would flourish. Sophie would turn 9 and then 10 and keep growing into the remarkable person she was becoming. Life would continue its forward motion, bringing challenges and changes and all the beautiful chaos of being human. But tonight, in this moment, sitting on a porch in a quiet town with fireflies dancing and the future stretching out before them full of possibility, everything was exactly as it should be. They were home. They were family. They were free. And that finally was more than enough.